Welcome back to the Pagan Hearth community. This weekend is Litha, midsummer, the summer solstice, one of the most widely celebrated sacred days across the ancient world. For many modern pagans, Litha has become associated with spellwork, circles, magical crafts, and personal spiritual practice. There's nothing inherently wrong with these things. But if we want to understand what the summer solstice meant to our ancestors, we need to step outside the modern occult framework for a moment. Because historically, the summer solstice wasn't a private ritual. It was a festival, a feast, a community celebration. This is a time when entire villages gather together to honor the height of the year. The longest day has arrived. The sun stands at its greatest power. The crops are growing. Animals are healthy. The people have survived another winter. And for a brief moment, before the hardships of harvest and the coming darkness of autumn, life is abundant. Litha is not about retreating into a closed circle. It's about coming together around a fire. To understand why, we need to understand the solstice itself. Across the ancient world, people observed the movement of the sun with extraordinary care. They may not have possessed modern astronomy, but they understood the rhythm of the heavens. They knew the days lengthened after winter, that the sun climbed higher and higher into the sky, and there came a day that when that growth ceased, the sun reached its highest point, its longest reign, its greatest victory. That day is the summer solstice. For many ancient peoples, this was not just an astronomical event. It's a sacred revelation of cosmic order. The Greeks called this order cosmos. The Romans called it de rerum natura, the nature of things. The Norse understood it through the cycles maintained by the gods and the turning of fate. The Celts observed it through seasonal rhythms that bound land, people, spirits, and deities together. Different cultures explained it in different ways, but they all recognized the same truth. The world moves in cycles. Nothing grows forever, and nothing declines forever. The solstice is both triumph and warning. The sun reaches its highest point, but then the days begin to shorten. The victory already contains the seeds of its decline. This paradox appears again and again throughout history. Strength contains weakness. Life requires death. Summer leads to winter. The wheel never stops turning. And so the solstice became a celebration, not only of abundance, but also of gratitude, a recognition that blessings should never be taken for granted. This brings us to one of the most universal solstice traditions throughout Europe: fire. Wherever we look, we find sacred fires. Among the Celtic peoples, enormous bonfires were lit up high upon hills. In Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Brittany, and Gaul, midsummer fires became gathering points for entire communities. People sang, they feasted and danced. Livestock were sometimes driven between the fires for blessing and protection. Communities reaffirmed bonds with one another. The fire represented the power of the sun itself brought down to earth. In Germanic lands, midsummer fires were equally important. Across Scandinavia and Northern Europe, communities gathered around great communal blazes. Songs were sung, stories were told, food was shared, young people courted one another, and family renewed social ties. The sacred and the social existed together. There was no sharp distinction between religious life and community life. Among the Slavic peoples, midsummer celebrations survived in festivals like Kupala Night. Here we find fire and water paired together. People leapt over flames while garlands floated down rivers. Communities celebrated fertility, prosperity, and the life-giving powers of nature. Even after Christianization, many of these customs proved impossible to eradicate because they were woven so deeply into the communal identity. The same pattern appears again and again. Fire, feasting, music, community, celebration, not isolation, not secrecy, not individual manifestation work. Community. This is one of the most important lessons modern pagans can learn from our ancestors. So many contemporary spiritual movements place tremendous emphasis on personal experience, my journey, my practice, my path, my intention, my belief. But traditional paganism, actual, historical, animistic, polytheistic belief, was rarely ever centered on the individual. It was centered on relationships with the gods, with the ancestors, local spirits, relationships with family and tribe and community. The summer solstice is one of the greatest opportunity to renew those relationships. A feast isn't only a meal. It's theology made visible. Think about that. When people gather around a common table, they're affirming belonging. They're affirming obligation and reciprocity. Across cultures, throughout the world, the sharing of food and drink carries sacred significance. The Romans spoke of do et des, I give so that you may give. Germanic cultures emphasize gift exchange and reciprocal obligation called the gifting cycle. Celts maintained complex systems of hospitality and sacred kingship built upon mutual responsibility. The Greeks understood xenia, the sacred bond between host and guest. Different cultures expressed it in different ways, but all recognized the same fundamental principle. Community is exchanged. The summer solstice feast became one of the greatest moments when those exchanges were renewed. Food is shared, stories are shared, songs are shared, and blessings are shared. And through those acts, communities strengthened the bonds that would carry them through the remainder of the year. This is why so many solstice celebrations were held outdoors, in sacred groves, on hilltops and open fields, along riverbanks and in the village commons. These locations brought people into direct relationship with the living world. Traditional pagan peoples did not separate spirituality from nature because they didn't view nature as separate from the sacred. The land itself is alive. Rivers, forests, mountains are alive. The world is filled with spirits other than just human beings. The solstice invites people to celebrate their place within that larger living community, not as masters of nature or as detached observers, but as participants, relatives, neighbors, members of a living cosmos. This perspective also explains why fertility themes often appear so frequently during midsummer celebrations. Modern people often misunderstand fertility symbolism. They immediately reduce it to sexuality. But fertility is so much broader than that. Fertility means thriving, growth, abundance, healthy crops and animals, healthy families, healthy communities. A fertile society is one capable of sustaining life. And so many midsummer customs focused on blessing fields, ensuring harvest, encouraging prosperity, and celebrating the vitality of land itself. This was practical spirituality. People understood that their survival depended upon successful harvests. The solstice is both a celebration and a prayer, a moment to rejoice in what has already been given and to ask that that blessing continues. There's another important lesson hidden within the solstice. The longest day is also the turning point. Soon, the darkness begins to slow. The ancient peoples understood this deeply. Every blessing is temporary. Seasons pass. Lives change. Rather than creating despairs, this awareness cultivated gratitude. The solstice teaches us to celebrate while the sun is high and to appreciate abundance while it exists, to honor joy while it's present, because it won't last forever. The wheel always turns. This understanding transforms the solstice from a simple seasonal holiday into a profound spiritual teaching. The sun reaches its greatest height to remind us that all things move in cycles. The gods teach through those cycles. The land teaches through those cycles. Life itself teaches through those cycles. And when we celebrate Litha this weekend, perhaps we should remember that. Our ancestors understood this is not a day for solitary crafting or magical working. It's a day for gathering and hospitality, a day for community, for laughter, for stories, music and feasting, a day for gratitude, a day to celebrate the living world and rejoice beneath the longest day of the year. because this is what our ancestors did. Not all in the same ways, but across the world, from Ireland to India, from Scandinavia to Greece, from Podlaski to Rome, we find the same recurring truth: the celebration of a life lived together. We are the Pagan Hearth. Invite your friends, celebrate, honor the gods, remember your ancestors, and keep the hearth fires burning. Good night.